Ethical Perspectives on the News is produced by the Interreligious Council of Linn County, which is solely responsible for its content. The views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of KCRG TV9.
Good morning. Welcome to this week's edition of Ethical Perspectives on the News. My name is Craig Van Sant. I teach at the University of Northern Iowa and hold the David W. Wilson Chair in Business Ethics there. Our topic today is higher education in a time of COVID. As you undoubtedly know, Iowa is currently one of the states with the highest per capita infection rate in the country and has been hit especially hard in the areas where our colleges and universities are located. Our panel today is gathering remotely in our continued effort to keep everyone safe. All of the panelists' institutions began the fall semester with students on campus and face-to-face classes. We have since seen several colleges and universities in other states shut down their campus classes and go to online courses. Higher education in a pandemic has proven to be difficult for everyone, and we want to explore some of those implications on today's show. First, let me introduce our panelists. With us this morning is Carissa Froyam, a professor in the Department of Sociology, Anthropology, and Criminology at the University of Northern Iowa. Carissa is also Vice President of UNI's Faculty Union and is a candidate for the Iowa House District number 63. Welcome to the show, Carissa.
Thanks, Craig. I'm really happy to be here with you.
Cool. Our second panelist is Ashley Muse, a student at Cornell. We just met, but Asher is a senior majoring in Management Information Systems and German. Asher, thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Craig. I'm really excited to be here.
Good. And we're also happy to have Paula O'Loughlin, who is the Provost and Dean of the Faculty at Coe College. Paula, thank you for being here.
Happy to be here.
Okay, as you can see, we have a somewhat widely dispersed panel today, which we specifically did so that we could get several perspectives on higher education in a time of COVID. Paula faces the difficult job of keeping a small private college operating in an increasingly challenging financial environment. Asher is trying to get the best education he can under incredibly difficult situations, and Carissa spent all summer advocating for both faculty and student interests in the midst of unprecedented hardships. It's clear that higher education is in crises on many fronts. What we hope to do today is explore just one of those, the COVID pandemic, and learn a bit about what can be done. Carissa, I'd like to start with you. We work together on United Faculty's Executive Board, and I know you spent many hours this summer helping UNI prepare for in-person classes this fall. Based on that experience, what did you find that student and faculty members' primary concerns were?
Yeah, the administration and faculty were spending a lot of time working over the summer. And their primary concerns have definitely been how to reopen the campus, but do so safely. So safety. And how do we make sure that we have the standard and the quality of education we're used to, while also ensuring the health and safety of our students and staff and faculty? But second, how do we do this in a way that doesn't repeat what happened in the spring? Because of course, in the spring, we were on campus and then we had a massive shutdown, and our students experienced a really traumatic time because they lost their education, their classes moved online. A lot of them were moved out of the dorms, lost their jobs. So we needed to be prepared on the front end to make sure that people were safe through the semester. And then Thirdly, we had to figure out, and the administration's been working tirelessly around this issue, what to do when people are either infected themselves or have some kind of exposure. And figuring that out is a major challenge, especially for our residential campuses.
I can certainly relate to that, having been in the classroom for a little over 3 weeks and seeing somewhere between a third and 50% of my students being quarantined. That is an issue. Asher, let me turn to you. Did Carissa leave anything out? What do you see as students' major concerns?
Yeah, so I mean, students are definitely worried about everything that Carissa has spoken about. But the number one thing I've heard people talk about when I talk to them about what's going on is they're concerned about their mental health. They've spent the last 6 months not seeing anyone but their family, and this is the first time they're being reunited with their friends, even if it is kind of can't come within 6 feet of them. You have to wear masks. This is the first time they're seeing their friends in 6 months, and it's both an exciting time and a scary time because they can't really do anything that they used to do with their friends. They can't eat lunch together. They can't, spend a day just sitting outside and doing their homework together. Everything has changed.
Okay, and I'm going to come back to you in a second to ask you to expand on that a little bit. But Paula, let me get you in the conversation here. Could I ask you to comment on the economic ramifications of the pandemic? How much of a factor was financial implications in your decision to reopen?
Our decision to reopen was actually always driven by the ethical question of, could we keep people safe? And if we couldn't keep people safe, we wouldn't be doing this. And I think that's true for every one of the colleges that I'm aware of, is if schools can keep people safe, then they feel comfortable reopening. If we did not feel like we could keep people safe, we would close. And we track numbers. We're watching the Iowa numbers with a great deal of concern. We're watching our own campus numbers right now with a great deal of concern. If it is not safer for our students to be at CO than other places, that's not good. It's certainly, if it's less safe, then that is a problem, and then we would not be open.
Well, I'm going to play cynic here a little bit. We have heard over the past decade, we've seen state legislatures cut funding for higher education. We see concerns in the papers, especially that smaller private liberal arts colleges are especially at risk. Especially one of the things you said, Paula, that I gather you think that CO should be safer than other places. That's a pretty high standard. And I'd really like you to comment a little on that safety versus financial expediency, if you will.
Well, yeah, I'm happy to. So you understand that we are the fastest growing college in Iowa, small liberal arts college, and we continue to be in that role. So at CO, we are tuition dependent like every other small private college, but we have been able to we have sustained our enrollment. So it's actually hasn't been as much of an issue for us in terms of the safety. Like Carissa referred to, I was one of those people spending, and am still one of those people spending forever thinking about how do we make this campus safe. It has to be safe enough, and we have to change the culture enough so that when you bring together all of these young people in close circumstances, like in residence halls, that they're following protocols that will keep them safe. Because this is different than walking down the street or going to Target. You've got people from all over the country living in residence halls together and sitting in classrooms together or working in labs together. And so the freedom, higher education institutions, I believe, have to be more aware of the conditions we work in than some other places because of the close proximity of our workers, of our community within our boundaries. So
Okay, thank you. And Asher, I'm going to come back to you on that. Paula talked briefly there about changing a culture, and I'm going to combine that with several newspaper reports I've seen where college administrators, in essence, are blaming students. One of my alma maters, University of North Carolina, went completely online within a week or two of opening up for classes and basically said it's the student's fault. How would you respond to that?
I think there is some extent of personal responsibility. The students were going to parties and they were disregarding the rules that had been put in place to keep them safe. But at the same time, it was expected. Like, we didn't not see this coming.
What do you mean by that?
Well, like changing the culture. Changing culture doesn't just happen like that. It's going to take time. As well, we have, to get into politics a little bit, 40% of the country supports Trump, and we have to expect, 25% of them to not want to wear masks, and those people are going to be going to college. They're going to be on the campus. They're not going to believe in masks, and they might follow the rules that the college has enforced, but they might not.
Well, I can speak from personal experience that the first thing I do when I get in my office and close the door is take my mask off. It is not a fun thing to wear. Is there a hope of speeding up this culture change? And I'm looking at Asher, but I'm more than happy to hear from anybody.
Well, I don't think it could be. I don't think it can be top down. I think when you do it by infractions or using student conduct systems, that's the wrong way to change the culture. Right. You need to do it by being active bystanders, by Asher talking to somebody and saying, hey, why aren't you wearing your mask, and things like that. And by faculty and staff and administrators choosing to wear their masks and affirm people for positive behavior. It's also to us, those of us who are faculty, staff, and administrators. We don't like wearing masks either. We've had a couple more months. I don't know how many times I go, oh, blank, I forgot my mask. I got to go back in and get it. So it's not just the students, it's our culture too, especially at institutions like we are represented on this call, where the in-person interactions are so important. Our in-person interactions are almost negligible at this point. They still happen, but you can't tell who somebody is. You can't see their facial gestures, all their hidden cues. And so the change in the culture is it's not just the students that have to do it. We have to do it, and it can't be from top down. It has to be everybody saying, I want to keep my community safe.
Craig, could I jump in here?
Sure. Carissa?
Oh, okay. Sorry, Asher. So I want to challenge, because I'm a sociologist, the perspective that we should be approaching this at the individual level, and instead we should be thinking about how our universities and colleges should be partnering with our communities and approaching the issues of mask wearing and social distancing and maintaining public health collectively, and not just pointing a finger at college students for their behaviors. Instead, Asher's completely right. This is completely predictable given what we know about people's behavior. And our response should be proactively thinking about how we can work together to create social systems that push us along in this direction. So I am extremely hesitant and actually very uncomfortable with the student blaming that we're seeing going around. because to me, that's a systematic failure. There is no mask mandate in our county. Bars are wide open, and students and young people need a way to socialize and be together and to meet those mental health needs that Asher was speaking about in ways that are safe. And it's our job to create and respond to the needs of our students to make sure we can do those things in safe ways too, rather than pointing the finger at 18-year-olds.
Okay.
Completely agree.
And I wanted to add, just you can't treat the faculty and staff as the same as students. A lot of the faculty and staff are going to have significant others and families to go home to, and people they can interact with, kind of in their bubble. While at least by Cornell's rules, I'm not allowed to spend any time with anyone without my mask on. Theoretically, I could with my roommate, but as an RA, I live in a single, so the only time I'm interacting with people is with a mask on.
Yeah, and people are really lonely right now. I'm seeing that with my students, but also myself as I'm walking around in hallways that are empty. That's a real big challenge, and we're social beings, and we need to figure out how we're going to make connections with people in this era. And I think that's one of the pieces that has been left behind.
Well, Carissa, you mentioned being a sociologist, and I've had a good bit of exposure to that field also. It seems to me that most people in the United States think in terms of psychology as opposed to sociology. Can you give us some examples of how society might help us make this transition?
Yeah, I'll just give you the example of one of my colleagues who's actually a medical sociologist, and she's been posting about, she's actually not surprised that people are as hesitant to wear masks and engage in, what people would think of as sort of norm-breaking behavior around social distancing now, because it's actually normative for us to do the opposite. And her response has actually been, she's surprised people have gone along with it this long. And I actually agree with her that actually what we're asking people to do is not just countercultural, but also against our nature in a lot of ways, that we need each other. The reason Coe and Cornell and you and I are such special places is because they're communities, and we need each other in community. And So one of the things we've been seeing is that people are hungry to have their relationships back. And how do we do that in this era of hyperprotection? And it's a challenge. It's a challenge. We have to innovate new ways.
Well, you artfully dodged my question, which was how could we do that? Paula, let Carissa off the hook, though. I saw you nodding vigorously, agreeing with Carissa. Do you have some ideas about how we can make this transition easier, faster, better?
I mean, by my name, I'm trained as a political scientist, so I'm thinking in that with that head on as well. And the answers to this is about figuring out new rituals and ways to interact and how to keep community. And that's a big challenge from my perspective. I don't have the answer to that, because the one way that we seem to be doing so many things is through Zoom. And actually, it's not a pleasant way to do a social engagement. So the answers that we've come up with, such as we have, is we've been doing a fair amount of things outdoors. Because we can interact a little bit more that way.
Which works until about mid-October.
Until after Labor Day.
People who are wanting to teach their classes outside, and we've said, absolutely, you can teach your classes outside. We're trying to do a lot more student life virtually, so doing a lot of programming for students in that way, but it's not the same, and we all know it's not the same. And so, it's easier with people you have a pre-existing relationship with. So the students who are returners, you have that relationship, you see them, you get to talk, and it's all good. but the students who are coming in as first years, or the faculty who are just coming to start at our institutions, things like that, their experience is so different. And I've actually had people, the other thing I would say is that I have had a group of faculty and staff that I just asked back in June to start checking on each other. And so there's a lot more phone calls, a lot of just checking in and sort of genuine, like, I didn't see you, but I just wanted to drop off this Diet Coke or something like that. And that's actually, those genuine things are helping a little bit, as are the connections, the people checking in on each other. So I think what this is requiring us to be is about a lot more intentional about the ties that bind us, but also bind us to our culture. So some of the pieces of our governance system and the culture of each one of our campuses, the quirky things that bring people together, we have to tie people to those rituals as well. So I guess I'm sounding like an anthropologist or a sociologist, but
I love it. One of the things that you can do is really have a quarantine, right? You have a group of people that you feel safe interacting with in person, and sort of, structuring your time that way. The other thing, and I've been trying to do this in my classroom, is actually breaking my larger class into smaller groups, and I am making them meet with each other. And in the beginning, I'm structuring their conversations, but as time goes on and as they get to know each other, I'm going to step back out of those groups some more. So one solution is really to work in building community in smaller and intentional groups, rather than relying on, a huge classroom space or, our large social gatherings. It's breaking it down into smaller pieces and building tight relationships with those folks. Because you can do the loose relationships virtually. It's harder to do close, intimate ones.
Just say one other thing is that our faculty meetings since the pandemic started, people are genuinely so happy to see each other. Who normally enjoys faculty meetings? And yet our faculty are really, and I don't know if it's like that for your student government, Asher, but people are just so genuinely happy to see other people that they wouldn't otherwise see nowadays.
We hear this from our students too, and I'm curious if that's Asher's experience, because our students are thrilled to be in class together. They tell me this every day, how happy they are that we are in person. And I think it really genuinely is that they miss each other and they miss us.
Asher, let me get you back in here. There is this perception among people my age that people your age get it in terms of being online and connecting remotely with other people. And yet I'm hearing that hasn't really been enough for you or for people your age. Can you comment on that virtual versus in person?
Yeah, honestly, when I was younger, I would have agreed with your perception of everything's fine online, but kind of as the summer has progressed, I've been really missing, spending time with people and just being with them in person. And just thinking about what we've been talking about here, of all of these, how can we build a community? What we're kind of still lacking is the organic opportunities to make friends and spend time with your friends that I feel like are really what make the college experience, just some of my best friends and people I've, gone on and done big school projects with, I've met just because I sat at lunch with a mutual friend, and then now they are my best friends. And so, there is nothing we can do to build these organic situations anymore, or at least from where I'm sitting, I don't think there is.
Which is kind of a scary thought. If we don't get a vaccine quickly, then we've got to figure out how to do something that we're talking about being very difficult, and it going on for a year or two. I don't know, Paula, can we get better at it?
I hope so. We adapt. We adapt to a lot of things. Higher ed has adapted to a lot of things. I think we can. I think it's really a social question. The institutions can adapt. We can change our processes, etc. but can we adapt enough to recreate the sense of community that we would get from the traditional in-person interactions? I think all we're doing is trying to hold on and create imitations until we can.
Okay. Carissa, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say that rather than looking at social interaction in an abstinence way, right, that we should be separated from each other, that we need to be thinking much more in terms of balance and mitigation. So how can we mitigate our risks but still meet our social and emotional and, you know, health and well-being needs at the same time? And there are all sorts of things we can do. And you know, as we've seen, people do develop relationships across space. The question is, how do we do that together when we're sort of in the same space, but not really? And we can do it. There's lots of ways to do it. But, you know, start by picking a small group of people that you want to really invest your time in and bond with those people and you know, keep yourself safe together because we do have some social needs we need to meet.
Okay. So let me talk about why this might be especially difficult for an educational milieu. There are lots of trade-offs that we are making. At least in my classes, I've always felt like students learn more when they're able to interact face-to-face and debate and disagree with each other. There's the safety versus financial aspects that we've talked about. What are some of the trade-offs that we're making that are most troublesome?
Well, I mean, one question from my perspective is we have a lot of people teaching online courses, at least at my institution, who have not spent years training to teach online. And so the quality of our education, where we have really amazing people who are faculty, and this is a broad higher education situation, but we are not as comfortable in the online virtual classroom as we are in the in-person classroom, and how is that affecting students' education? And so the trade-off there is safety and perhaps a loss of some of that mystical feeling of being in a small residential living learning environment.
And not all things can be moved online. How do you move a lab or a music class or an art class? Those things can't be replicated. And, you know, in the case of UNI, what they've done is taken great steps to mitigate the risks so people can be in person when they need to be.
And we're almost out of time. Asher, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of add on of, it really is about, you know, you have to mitigate but still do these activities that, you know, maybe are a little bit risky because the students are taking a calculated risk. Just like, you know, if you go to the grocery store, the students kind of make that same decision in their head when they go and spend time with a friend, even distance. They like, okay, you know, is it safe? How safe is it? How important is it?
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut you off there. We're out of time. Thank you all for being here. Great discussion, I thought. On behalf of the Interreligious Council of Linn County, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us this morning, and for all of you viewers who are able to see the show again. Have a great week.